Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into what is honestly one of the most fascinating and definitely one of the most consequential eras in human history. When the armistice was finally signed on November 11th, 1918, communities all over the globe celebrated this incredibly hard-won peace. People genuinely believed that the devastating, totally unprecedented scale of that carnage would deter global conflict forever. It was the war to end all wars, right? Well, as we're going to see today, the period from 1919 to 1939 wasn't some peaceful era of recovery at all. Instead, it really functioned as a highly volatile 20-year truce. So, here's the big question we really need to unpack. How did a war to end all wars lead to a far, far worse one in just 2 decades? Let's trace the tragic domino effects that led the world straight into World War II. We're going to look at how the peace treaties of the First World War actually planted the seeds for future conflict, how a totally devastating global economic collapse shattered democratic systems, and how a new breed of aggressive dictators expertly exploited all those fractures. Let's start with Section 1, a flawed peace. Okay, to really understand the origins of World War II, we absolutely have to start at the Peace Tables of Paris in 1919. That's where they built this incredibly flawed foundation. The Treaty of Versailles was drafted by the victorious Allied powers to dictate terms to a defeated Germany. But instead of establishing a stable, balanced European landscape, the treaty was highly punitive. It was basically driven by retribution. The terms were just crushing. First off, you had the War Guilt Clause, Article 231, which forced Germany to accept absolute sole responsibility for causing all the loss and damage of World War I. Then they were hit with these massive financial reparations. We're talking astronomical debts primarily owed to France and Belgium that ended up crippling the German economy and triggering wild hyperinflation. And on top of the money, they faced severe territorial losses and extreme military restrictions. Just to help you truly grasp the severity of those territorial losses, think about this number for a second. Germany was stripped of 13% of its entire European territory, just carved right off. And on top of that, they lost literally all of their overseas colonies. This wasn't just some abstract political reshuffling on a map. This left the German public feeling deeply, deeply humiliated and incredibly resentful. And those military restrictions I mentioned, they were just as intense. The entire German army was capped at a tiny 100,000 men. They were totally banned from operating an air force, and they couldn't have a submarine fleet either. So what happened was, the treaty didn't crush Germany completely, but it certainly didn't reconcile with them. It essentially created a pressure cooker of resentment. It left the nation economically hobbled and highly, highly vulnerable to radical politicians who promised to just tear up the treaty and restore their national pride. Which brings us to Section 2. The economic catalyst. So during the mid-1920s, there was this brief, kind of fragile economic recovery, but then a financial wrecking ball completely destroyed it. We can call this the Depression domino effect. It kicked off on October 29th, 1929, with a massive Wall Street crash in New York. And because the global economy was already deeply interconnected, global loans just instantly dried up and international trade plummeted. That collapse directly caused mass unemployment and widespread social despair all over the world. And step 4 is where we see the political landscape totally fracture. This intense economic despair led directly to a total loss of faith in democratic governments, paving the way for some very extreme politics. It is so crucial to understand just how bad things got. Look at this figure. Unemployment soared to over 30% in countries like Germany. Just imagine that for a second. Nearly a third of the entire workforce with absolutely zero income. People's life savings were completely wiped out. Everyday families were literally facing starvation and complete desperation. Society became highly polarized, simply because people couldn't afford basic necessities like food and housing. And all of that suffering brings us to a really profound, undeniable truth. Desperation breeds extremism. When people are starving, when they're losing everything they have, they become completely disillusioned with their current leaders. They start looking for radical solutions. They become far, far more willing to listen to extreme political parties offering simple fixes, easy scapegoats, and the promise of strongman leadership. Moving right along to Section 3, the rise of dictators. That massive vacuum of economic ruin and national humiliation we just talked about, it created the absolute perfect breeding ground for totalitarian ideologies. Now, while we know a dictator is someone who has complete control and limits opposition, the true danger of these figures lies much deeper than that. Dictators step into these political vacuums and they systematically dismantle democracies from the inside out. They take these fragile republics and replace them with regimes where the state becomes absolutely supreme over the individual. We can really see this if we look at the parallel paths of two specific leaders. Over in Italy, Benito Mussolini exploited the country's post-war chaos to seize power in 1922. He established this fascist corporate state that focused heavily on intense nationalism and violently suppressing any political opponents. Similarly, Adolf Hitler used the Great Depression to propel the Nazi Party from a fringe group to a major power, eventually becoming chancellor in 1933. Once in power, he relentlessly targeted public anger over the Treaty of Versailles. He scapegoated minorities, particularly Jewish people, for all of Germany's struggles, completely abolished the democratic Weimar Republic, and began a massive, totally illegal military rearmament. So, both of these men promised economic recovery and national pride, but it came at the ultimate cost of democratic freedom. Let's look at Section 4, Aggression and Appeasement. Now, you might be wondering, what on earth was the rest of the world doing while all this was happening? Well, by the mid-1930s, the League of Nations completely failed to stop these expanding regimes. Instead, they relied heavily on a strategy of appeasement. Appeasement is basically allowing aggressive actions to happen, making diplomatic concessions to these dictatorial powers, just to avoid open conflict. We do have to try and view this objectively, though. Britain and France weren't just happily ignoring the problem. They were driven by a desperate, empathetic fear of repeating the horrific mass casualties of World War I. They honestly, genuinely believed that by giving these dictators just a little bit of what they wanted, they could satisfy them and avoid another global catastrophe. Which, when you know what happens next, makes this quote one of the most tragically ironic statements in modern history. Following the 1938 Munich Agreement, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain proudly declared he had achieved peace for our time. Chamberlain had literally just flown to Munich and agreed to let Hitler take the Sudetenland, which was a region of Czechoslovakia, in a doomed attempt to satisfy Hitler's expansionist demands. The international community offered absolutely no physical resistance, only some verbal condemnations, as this aggression just continued unchecked. That leads us to our last stop, Section 5, the final spark. As we know now, appeasement was totally destined to fail. Global tension was rapidly rising through this terrifying rapid sequence of unchecked invasions. In 1931, Japan's increasingly powerful military leaders invaded Manchuria looking for resources. Then in 1935, Mussolini's Italy invaded Ethiopia. Jump to 1938, Germany annexes Austria and the Sudetenland. And then shortly after that, Hitler broke his Munich promise entirely by seizing the rest of Czechoslovakia. The international system, which lacked its own military force and was missing key member nations, completely struggled to enforce its own rules. The momentum toward war was just unstoppable at this point. And then we hit the final spark. On September 1st, 1939, German forces unleashed a massive mechanized invasion into Poland. This blatant act of aggression finally shattered that fragile 20-year truce once and for all. Appalled, and finally realizing that their appeasement strategy had completely failed, Britain and France drew a hard line in the sand. True to their diplomatic word, they declared war on Germany 2 days later, on September 3rd. World War II had officially begun. So what does this all mean for us? The interwar period teaches us that global conflict rarely happens overnight. It's a chain reaction. The Treaty of Versailles left deep, festering resentments. The Great Depression wiped out prosperity and shattered people's trust in democracy entirely. Dictators rose straight out of that desperation, and a hesitant international community failed to stop them when they had the chance. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to chew on. If the seeds of the next global conflict were planted in the flawed piece of the last, what unresolved issues are we totally ignoring today? I hope this explainer has given you a much clearer understanding of the mechanics of history. Thanks for hanging out with us, and keep asking the big questions.